Being super inventive and thoughtful with your abilities is like really, really important. I am well fed, thank you. Yeah. Your imagination is spectacular, good sir. What is this picture? Not sure about the picture there, bro. Damn, Raymond, this is a long one. Holy shit, what the fuck? Okay. Okay. No wonder it took you so long. This is a breakdown, bro. Holy shit. 7,000 words? Oh my god, dude. That is... We accept the reality of the world that is presented to us. No truer words could be spoken. No truer words could be spoken, bro. Holy shit. Because what's presented to you is reality. How would you know anything else? Right? That's kind of one of the big things. That's a quote from The Truman Show. Ah. Nice. Nice. Well, if it's talking about reality, then we're gonna go in depth. Holy shit. It's gonna take me like 4 hours to read. I'm gonna be stumbling over fucking everything. Make Ninja jealous. But then again, I read like a good 6,000, 7,000 words. We read for like 2.5, 3 hours straight on Ninja's story. But to be fair, a lot of the beginning, like hour and a half of that was using the voice, and we were talking really slow and methodical. I wish I could banish these ads, that D&D meme where the characters roll a perception check large enough that his comrades look like pieces of plastic and he can make out the outline of giants standing behind the screens of reality. Also, now I'm adding images as a kind of cover to all the essays. Ooh. I like it, Raymond. I like it. Alright, you guys ready? We're gonna lock the fuck in. Here we go. We accept the reality of the world that is presented to us. Ground news is a symbolic device built upon the promise of absolute neutrality. Founded in Ontario, Canada by Harleen Kaur, former NASA engineer, and Suk Singh, a former Bain consultant? What's Bain? Company claims to be independent from core corporate media, big tech, and governments. It is sustained by a small group of private investors and by its subscribers. This stance of being outside of power is part of its marketing. Presents itself as a force meant to restore trust in journalism by exposing biases, factuality, and media ownership. But the real question is not who stands behind Ground News, but what conception of political knowledge drives them. What model of objectivity, what notion of truth sustains the architecture of their device? Its epistemologically is that of moral quantification. Belief that political conflict can be reduced to a measurement system, bias, factuality, ownership, and that this metric will reveal the purity of corruption of ideas, or corruption or purity of ideas. It is the same faith that animates the Marxist who needs a figure to obey, or the liberal who seeks a doctrine to absolve him. Ground News is not so much an app as it is a pedagogy, I think, of vicarious thinking. School of delegation, where each user learns to outsource their judgment to an algorithm that promises to see what they cannot. Pet a doggy. Pet a doggy. Woof, words, man. You're killing me with words, Raymond. Kant defined enlightenment as the emergence of man from his self-imposed immaturity. His inability to use his own understanding without the guidance of another. Here, on the contrary, voluntary immaturity is cultivated. I want to pet a doggo. A doggy. I've got a doggy. Technically, I do got a doggy. I don't know where the doggy is. Somewhere in my closet. Not a dog person. Only because you have to take care of them. I would feel horrible for a dog that I owned because I would just neglect it. Cat I can just feed and I just pet when I go downstairs. If it wants to come into my room, it can. Other than that, she just fucks off. His inability to use his own understanding without the guidance of another. Here, on the contrary, voluntary immaturity is cultivated. The user gladly submits to the tutelage of an algorithm, celebrating his own dependence as if it were informational freedom. Ground News is not so much an app as a pet a doggy of vicarious thought. It teaches the replacement of effort with the illusion of immediate understanding. Yet the irony becomes even sharper when one examines the economic structure. Many of its most useful or comparative features are locked behind a paywall. Access to neutrality becomes a privilege. Informational transparency turns into a commodity. The algorithm, transformed into a pocket guru, offers itself as a substitute for critical reason, promising to tell us which sources are trustworthy, which perspectives are biased, and what to think and ultimately what to feel. The gesture borders on theater, like a snake oil salesman. Only the new sophist proclaims, "You will no longer have to bother analyzing, thinking, or understanding. You won't need to know what is true or false, good or evil. I will even tell you what you should like, whether it is beautiful or ugly, and all you have to do is pay me." Thus, the enlightened citizen becomes a consumer of plausibilities, surrendering autonomy to a system that profits precisely from his abdication. The vicarious thinking, moreover, is not exclusive to our digital age. It is the most persistent logic of modern politics. Marxists, in their endless genealogy of leaders, have succeeded one another like theological dynasties. Some followed Stalin blindly, others Trotsky, some worshipped Maoism, others swore loyalty to Hoxha, Sescu, say Sescu, say Sescu, 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 or Guzman. There were those who turned Kim Il-sung into a prophet of dynastic socialism, and Fidel Castro into both King of Cuba and Messiah of the perpetual revolution. The dumb Romanian dude, yeah. Oh, I love it. Be right back. Sounds good, Hugo. Today, from that entire lineage, only the images survive. The same people who once cheered executions now wear Mark's t-shirts. Oh, I'm not even gonna try.
Mariategui or Rikabaran?
Mariategui Rikabaran. Alright. Those who justified purges now recite fragments of decapital at progressive summits, or in pamphlets that Marx himself would never have read without bursting into laughter, such as the little pamphlet included in a Call's 50th anniversary edition of Marx Capital with text by
Cesar Renduilis, Slavoj Žižek, and Elizabeth Duval.
Not even gonna try. For which I would have gladly paid extra not to have. Since apart from Zizek, who at least manages to be entertaining, the rest are a monumental botch. Tradition becomes souvenir, dogma an accessory. Liberals are no less devout. The names change, but the ritual is identical. They swear themselves heirs of reason and liberty, yet each clings to his domestic variant of the creed. There are democratic liberals and conservatives, federalists, progressives, old-school Republicans, national autonomists, reformists, centrists, social liberals, technocrats, and even those who mix laissez-faire with Catholic theology or political Islam. So let me ask you guys a question. Do you think Islamophobia is a thing? As if the market of the dogma could share an altar. Most enamored with the Australian school, Mrs. Hayek Rothbard sees Islam. Guys, I have a question. Pronounce their names with the devotion of one reciting verses. And they do so with the same conviction with which Marxists recite Lenin. Yeah, also, yeah, Islamophobia is 100% a thing. Okay. So then, Raymond, let me ask you this. Is Christianophobia a thing? I like your answer. I don't agree with it, because I think it removes attention of the phobia, but I understand where the root of the word comes from and what people are trying to mean by it, and the fact that you're consistent with that is very important. We like hate each other. We like hate each others. Yeah, we like to hate each other. Exactly. So I'm glad that you said that, because a lot of people I find, Raymond, will say Islamophobia is a thing, but Christianophobia or something like that, like if it's a phobia towards a different religion, isn't a thing. As long as you're principled in believing that, yes, you can have like an extreme phobia-ish kind of idea towards the idea of religion, and that equates to every single religion because of how powerful fanaticism can be when, you know, doctrine is involved, when the only thing you're following is your own interpretation of a book or someone else's interpretation of it. So I feel it's the wrong word to be used, but until we have something better, I can understand the use of it. That's pretty much my stance on it, but I don't like it. I don't think it should be phobia, because phobia implies something that you can't change. Like an irrational fear. There are reasons why you should fear religion. And some of them are irrational, but some of them are also rational. So adding the phobia onto it makes it like every criticism of religion is because you don't like it. Most people are irrational, yeah, but there are rational reasons to not like religion, even though most people lean towards the irrational most of the time. So I do agree with that. Okay, Twitch didn't like my last message. Would you say? Apparently saying fool was banned from Muffin. He couldn't say fool for some reason. Wouldn't let him hit enter. Yesterday, I don't know what it was. I was in someone's chat and, dude, Japan killed thousands of Christians by tying them to crosses in the sea. I believe it. Christianity basically changed Japan. The influence of, like, Christianity, because they've basically been on an island and they never have to worry about outside. Technically said the death threat. Said, like, a death threat. Oh! I see what you mean. Yeah, I could see that. But I added... quotations. Makes sense. Pronounce their names with devotion of one reciting verses, and they do so with the same conviction with which Marxists recite Lenin, convinced that the master's name alone suffices to legitimize the truth. I call upon God, and thus it is so. I invoke the name. Said name said it, thus it must be true. Paradox. Ground News said it was neutral, so it had to be neutral, right? Paradox is that all believe they think for themselves, and yet none of them do. My homie CJ says I rock and you suck. I mean, fair enough. He knows you, he doesn't know me. Right? That's how I would think about it. Like, you gotta be all about yourself, man. If you're not advocating for yourself, who will? It's the paradox of selfishness. That selfishness is actually the most important trait that humans can have. Just some people take it to extremes. Like everything. You can be the same way with being naive. Being so naive, you jump into a tiger's den and be like, I told you they're not bad, and then they fucking eat you. Well, it's not the tiger's fault they ate you, it's your fault for jumping into the tiger's den. Some people are too good at it. I don't know if you mean sucking, as in, like, sucking dick, because I am. But thanks. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. True, Raymond. Paradox, theophobia, fear of religions or religious people. See, I think that's better to not categorize it as the fear of a single religion, but the fear of all religions irrationally. Like, most people, like, don't like Islam because they think it portrays women in a bad light, and it, abuses children. I don't know if that's true or not. I've never read the Quran. Because, you know, you talk to a priest and they'll say, oh yeah, the Bible says you're totally allowed to molest children. It says it right here. Yeah, totally. So, like, you gonna who you gonna trust, right? It's where it's like there's the irrational fear comes out of the misinformation of the religion. I've read the Bible, I've never read the Quran. And I know that you don't... You think more of the essence and the subtlety and the between the lines than you do the actual words on the page, right? You can have an irrational fear of a single religion, but excluding Christianity as being possible to have a phobia about is just plain stupid. The Bible says a lot of shit. The Bible says angels are machines. Ezekiel description of an angel. Rings within rings of eyes of light with sightless eyes. The Bible says rich people can't go to heaven. Yeah, you have to give up your worldly possessions. If you... angel is the designation of the alien landing craft. I could see that, Sean. Absolutely. What is the origin of the halo? That's a good one. We go in full-on ancient aliens here. Hell yeah, we are. I love it. I like the idea of it. It's not I 100% believe it. I'm skeptical of it being true, but I understand that, yeah, you know, definitely makes things that add up. Alien landing craft with its super bright lights and sound systems. Such a dope theory. I love it because it makes sense. And by definition, God is an alien. You know, we may be made in his image, but we are hybrids because we don't have God's power. We are simply made in his image. And if we're made in God's image, that's not physically, that's consciousness. We are made in the image of consciousness of God. Blasting black-eyed peas. Crab bucket! It's not ancient aliens, that's dumb. It's futuristic time travelers. There you go, Hugo, you solved it. 100%. Nah, Black Sabbath. Get some war pigs up in here. We're going to war, bitches! Let's do it! Well, apparently their music was so strong it could heal people. They come in, Joe Rogan comes out of the ship. He's just smoking a fat doob. He's like, fuck yeah, thanks guys, this is killer galactic weed, man. It's good stuff. Yeah. Oh, hey, how's it going, buddy? That shit ain't from this galaxy, I'll tell you that. They said they could fix my hair, but I said I liked it better being bald. It's like The Rock. Rock looks fucking weird with hair. Oh yeah, cause God and shit. Just be good, y'all. I'm cool this way. Yup. The Rock's new movie fucking rocks. Wait, there's a new movie? What new movie? I'm not up to date on anything. He's a little fucking loser. The reds, the blues, the spotless centrists repeat identical structures of epistemic obedience. The idols change, but the mental structure remains. Thought is not exercised, it is delegated. It is what we might call the catechism syndrome Of enlightenment, intelligence as echo, convention as a substitute for understanding. Smashing Machine, best shit he has been on. Actual good movie. The Smashing Machine. Like, smashing? I'm picturing some Johnny Bravo level shit. Like The Rock with like the Johnny Bravo haircut. He has hair. God, he must look weird with hair. I can't picture him with hair. I just picture a big head. Problem is not the plurality of doctrines, but their transformation into cognitive consumption. Each trend offers its catalog of certainties as one more brand in the marketplace of ideologies. He just doesn't look The Rock-like. And the modern user, who no longer has time to read a manifesto or study history, chooses his faith as one chooses a playlist. Thus is built the new metaphysics of opinion. If something pleases me, it must be true, good, and beautiful. If it disturbs me, it must be false, evil, and ugly. That is the underlying epistemology of the algorithmic age. Ground News did not invent it, merely systemized it. The app does not create biases or organize them, nor does it combat political faith. It aestheticizes it. It allows us to keep believing that we are judging, when in reality we're merely selecting the filter that most resembles ourselves. In that sense, its success does not lie in its technical capacity, but in its anthropological institution. It understood that the modern human does not seek truth, but confirmation, and it offers that confirmation in high resolution with pleasant colors and precise percentages, so that every user, whether a nostalgic Marxist or a chainsaw-wielding liberaloid, can gaze into the mirror of data and say to themselves, I think freely. The myth of media objectively appears clearly in the methodologies Ground News it cites. It draws on the average political bias rating of organizations such as All Sides, Media Bias, Fact Check, MBFC, and Ad Fonts Media to locate each outlet on the potential spectrum. It also includes measures of factuality, use of verifiable sources, speed of corrections, and contextualization of language. These practices are not neutral. They operate under cultural, linguistic, and historical standards rooted in the United States and Anglo-liberal countries. At MBFC, for instance, the categories left, right, and center are calibrated according to the American political consensus. What counts as extreme, what counts as moderate. In All Sides, participants in blind surveys are American citizens. The expert reviewers are mostly from the same context, and the evaluative scales reflect what that public perceives as centrism, moderate left or right. That asymmetry inevitably introduces a prior ideology into the very act of measurement. What today is understood as liberalism, conservatism, political pragmatism, or neutrality is colored by the historical struggles, imaginaries, and moral judgments of the Anglo-liberal world. When such labels are applied to media from other countries with distinct histories, memories, and cultural matrices, they risk decontextualization. Speaking of alignment, it's weird that centralism isn't mentioned. On Ground News? You mean that it's only right and left side? and that it's not, there is no center. I never even thought about that, Ninja, because I've never used ground news. I would consider myself a centrist, because people would think, like, what? Abortion's on the right, and... Or is abortion on the left? Wait, is abortion on the left and guns are on the right? I absorb both conservative and woke mindset on moderate conditions. Because they both have good value. I take whatever the good value is out of something. But too much can be bad on both sides. Yeah, because you don't want to homogenize it. You want it to spread everything out. Ground news fucking sucks, and I'm gonna die on this hill. I've never used it, Raymond, but I could see where you're coming from. I like the concept of it, but I don't like news either way, and I don't like news that says that it's this side or that side. I want facts. That's all. I don't want a news story. I want facts. And I think that's what people are fucking tired of. People are fucking tired of a news story. They just want the facts. Just give me the facts. Don't put a spin on it. Don't be bullshitty about it. Just dictate the facts to me, and then I'll make up my mind about it. For example, conservatives do some good value, like encouraging strong families. Yeah, like a nuclear family, right? Strong male figure that works, mother that stays home and takes care of the kids. Great way to live. That's how my parents were. That's how I was raised. That's how I'd want to raise my kids. Stay-at-home mom. My sister's a stay-at-home mom. Woke side, on the other hand, encourages inclusivity of others, which I like too. I like the inclusivity part, but I don't like the whatchamacallit? What do you call it? Sometimes they go the same way on those ideas. The essay goes into that. Yeah. There are people who don't want to be included, right? Problem is that political affiliations became package deals. Like, if you're conservative, it means you agree with this list. Yeah. True centralist is someone who absorbs both ideals and moderate conditioning. Finds the center, right? They've created the us versus them. You can only hold these values to be conservative. You can only hold these values. Centrist can be like 1,000 different things, too. Because they're combinations of it, right? It's just how far on the spectrum. Dreamy Bloody, welcome, welcome. How's it going? Been a while, buddy. How's it going? Also, there's a shitload of left-wing parties and ideologies. I hate the fact that the POV for both woke and conservative, it has to be one or the other. Yeah, they can't find common ground between the two. That's the two-party system. Well, I'm from South America, but I'm a Marxist, a radical communist. I think communist has some good ideas, right? I think socialism has some good ideas. I think capitalism has some fucking bad ideas. So sorry for what this essay is gonna say in a bit. Dreamy Bloody. For example, conservative parties in South America may defend state intervention in health and education while rejecting reproductive rights. Liberals in Asia may coexist with authoritarian political authorities as long as they defend open markets. That's fucking China. That's literally fucking China. Democracies in Europe recognize broad social rights within coalition led by conservatives. The system like Ground News, based in neutrality on imported labels without adaptation, it runs the risk of imposing a kind of cognitive neo-colonialism, classifying global political discourse according to a regional paradigm. Conversation of political conflict into data. The conversion of political conflict into data is another central dimension. In Ground News, differences in coverage, blind spots, and bias versus factuality comparisons are turned into tools. What emerges is an informational spectacle, watching how different outlets tell the same story, observing discrepancies, seeing what is silenced. Platform's main function seems not to dispute arguments, but to observe disorder from above. That distance is ideological. It presupposes a gaze of authority, an external observer who judges other discourses without submitting to them. Political conflict ceases to be praxis, struggle, debate, historical contradiction, and becomes a comparative spectacle, digestible and balanced. I grew up in the middle-class family, but studying geopolitics, psychology, economics, and other things made me realize that the only way to resolve conflicts would be a dictatorship of the proletariat, an overcoming of capitalism. I show you the revolution, comrades. The structure that we're using now doesn't work. I agree with Asman where 85% of people shouldn't be able to vote. I shouldn't be able to vote because I don't know anything about Canadian politics. Why the fuck am I voting if I'm not voting for policy? Also, you shouldn't vote for people. You should vote for policies. And once you've voted for policies, then you can pick who you think best represents those policies. I think it should be a two-step vote. It should be, what do we want to do? Who do we think will do that? And there's like a disconnection, like a separation of state and church. Where, lots of ways to vote. Yeah. I just think you should remove the ability to vote from people who aren't voting for the reasons that are policy. Canada is a super weird system too, Raymond. I honestly don't even know. I vote because my parents tell me who to go vote for. That's why I shouldn't vote. Because I'm not voting my own voice. I'm adding to someone else's. Now, they're my parents, but still, it's not my vote, right? And I'm 34, and I voted 3 times. Period. They point and go like a robot. I'm like, well, I don't know. I mean, he's legalizing weed. Fuck it. Yeah. Next thing you know, we have a dictator. Better than Harper. Worse than the guy that we just got, though. I don't even know the fucking Prime Minister's name. No fucking idea who the fuck he is. Don't care. Don't fucking care. Birth of the algorithm as the contemporary form of instrumental reason is no technical accident. It is the continuation and composition of a philosophical and sociological tradition that diagnoses the colonization of meaning by techniques of calculation and management. I mean, he dissolved the Congress, but hey, free weed. As long as we have a ruling class, we'll always have an imbalance of power. We should get rid of any rulers and create a system of community-based enforcement of rules. I advocate for communist anarchy. Voting is their game. The center is only thinking about its own interests. We have the corrupt. And the conservatives only want to keep the terrorists conquered by imperialism and the billionaires safe. There's only one way, boys. Organization and taking over the state. I mean, revolution's gonna come in one way or another if they keep doing what the fuck they're doing, right? Like, people say, okay, we're gonna vote you in to do this, and you say, yes, I'm gonna do it. And they're like, okay, you're voted in. And then they go, well, why didn't you do it? And they're like, I just didn't. And it's like, well, we voted you in to do it. Yeah, I know, but it just, it was never really on my priority list. Well, then why did you run for it, and why did we vote you in for it? You guys are dumb. Fuck you. Bye. I'm not talking about adventurism. I'm talking about organization and revolution. The capitalist was born of the bourgeoisie revolution, just as the monarchy was born of a revolution. Now it's our turn. True way. Sterilize humanity, allow it to die off, let nature retake the earth. I mean, there is a solution there, Hugo. I love the idea. Oh, the Earth is dying! No, the Earth will always be here unless we literally blow it the fuck up to smithereens. Even if we nuke the entire planet, the planet doesn't give a fuck. In a million years, it's just not even gonna matter. Let's try go full on Mad Max. True. Beginning with Max Weber. The central metaphor is rationalization, the progressive rational technological disciplining of human action, the bureaucratization of the world, and the disenchantment and Swabber that leaves the individuals without mythical horizons, reduced to components of an administrative apparatus. Mad Max rode something closer to anarcho-capitalism. More like any kind of anarchism. Hey, I'm a nihilist, man. I'm in it for the anarchy just because the current system isn't working, so let's get rid of the current system, and whatever system we come next, it's gotta be better than this. You say that now until it happens, and then you're like, ah, shit, I didn't think it could get worse. I'm here to get fucked up. Hey, I'm here to be euthanized, man. I'm just waiting for that. Just waiting for them for the day to walk in and be like, okay, your time's up. Get in the chamber. And I'll be like, ah, fucking finally. Jesus, what took you guys so long? Holy fuck. You're like 10 years too late, guys. Oh, let's go, Queen. Get your toque ready. One of these days, guys, one of these days, I swear I'm gonna knock my bong over. Smokey! Damn, I gotta wait till tomorrow to smoke. That sucks, Raymond. I know, Queen. I really know. I think Smokey might have been serious. And he might actually be gone. I'm really sad. There goes my one kick viewer. Fuck. I'm a sad man. True, Queen. Okay, 3, 2, 1, go! He said I wasn't fun anymore, so he was finding a new streamer. Fair enough. I'm surprised he stuck around as long as he did, considering he's not a writer. At least he's immortalized in the follow message, right? I'm not mad about it. I think you're fun. Smokey's a troll, though. So who the fuck knows? He literally could be on fucking vacation, and he's gonna come back and laugh his fucking ass off. No, he just, at the end of the stream, he said, you always go offline when I get here. And I'm like, yeah, I know, bud. And he's like, L streamer. I'm gonna find another streamer to watch. You're no fun anymore. And I said, alright, yep, sounds fair, man, you know? It is what it is. Because 3 days in a row, I ended early, and just as he came into the stream, even though I'd already said, like, 20 minutes earlier I was ending, I was just, like, you know, kind of just sitting back and talking and just finishing off the final thoughts before we ended the stream. And then he'd pop in and be like, yeah, you're leaving? And I'm like, yeah, I am. Bye! And then I'd end the stream. I guess the third time was the charm. He had enough of it and he was like, fuck this. Because he said, don't end the stream until I come back. And he came back and I ended the stream. To be fair, it took him like 40 minutes to fucking come back. What was I supposed to do? That was the 40 minutes I was giving him to play Path of Exile. And then, like I said, I can't cater to a single viewer if it's gonna, like, fuck me up. I said I was gonna do 9 to 12 hour streams. Can't do it. Too much. I'm too tired. Nope. I just don't wanna. If we do them, we do them, but I don't want it to be, like, a requirement. Right? 6 hours. That's basically the requirement. Unless something happens, I don't want to stream for less than 6 hours. That seems like a ripoff. Shit, and I feel that 3 hour stream is too long for me. Well, it's because I'm on vacation right now, Hugo. Usually I would do 3 hours. I'd stream from like 12:30 to 3:30, and then depending, I would go longer. Sometimes, depending, like, if it was a long day, if it was my day off, I'd probably go longer. If I'd, like, slept all day and I'd just woken up, sometimes we'd do 10-hour streams. But since I've been on vacation since the beginning of September, we've been doing consistent 6 to 8 to 9 hour streams. I never thought I'd see so much stories in one day ever since I got here. It's crazy. Well, I mean, you just put your mind to it, do what you gotta do, right? I am privileged in the fact that I don't technically have a job right now, but that doesn't really mean anything, because I never needed the job to begin with. I just like having somewhere to go, something to do, people to talk to, something to get out of the house, right? Give me inspiration, give me perspective. Grrr! True, Callie, true. How are you, good sir? Welcome, welcome. Are you playing Rivals, Callie? Weber teaches us that modernity produces institutions that optimize ends through increasingly formal and specialized means. This structure, the primacy of adequate means for given ends, is the epistemological matrix that makes it plausible today to believe that an algorithm can measure political truth. In the passage from Weber's administrative technique to the algorithm, we observe the same logic. Yeah! True, Callie. True. We'll get there. The validity of the ends is never questioned, only the efficiency of the procedures. Horkheimer and Adorno radicalized this suspicion. Enlightenment, they argued, became a cultural industry. Culture itself was commodified, and the technical form colonized aesthetic and cognitive experience. The culture industry produces standardized culture, manufactures desires, and shapes subjectivity is according to the logics of consumption and social reproduction. In this process, critique loses ground and autonomous judgment dissolves into consumer habits in light of that critique. A bias measuring algorithm does not appear as a neutral tool, but as new modality of the culture industry. Turns political experience into a legible package and sellable product, and naturalizes prefabricated categories, left, center, right, as if they were neutral repertoires rather than historical institutions, institutional constructions. Marshall McLuhan compels us to shift attention from content to the medium as the formative factor of social relations. He argues that the medium itself shapes the senses and the scales of social experience. The technological transformations restructure the very forms of thought. In the case of algorithmic platforms, the intended message, comparing sources, reevaluating biases, is not neutral. The architecture of the interface, graphical visualizations, update latency, and engagement-based prioritization are the message. They restructure how users perceive informational plurality. It is not merely what is measured, but how the medium's form reconfigures the modes of attention and judgment. Jürgen Habermas offers a complementary critique centered on the public sphere. Democratic deliberation requires communicative conditions, equal access, reasoned discussion, normative autonomy. That the integrated structures of market and media systematically erode. For Habermas, was the colonization of the life world by instrumental systems, market administration, corrupts the very possibility of rational critical dialogue. From this perspective, ground news participates in that colonization. It presents information as a technical object to be optimized, rather than as a public space of argumentation where legitimacy is discursively enacted? Question mark? The illusion of the comparing all voices reproduces the very form of domination Habermas denounces, substituting critical judgment for pre-legitimized indicators. The existentialists and phenomenologists Jaspers, Ballno, Moriner add another dimension, a critique of technocracy that reduces human experience to operational functions. Carl Jaspers warned against the totalitarian temptation of science to replace existence with normative systems. His insistence on the limits of scientific method before human transcendence reminds us that political questions bear an existential weight that cannot be reduced to metrics. Ott F. Ballno, with his analysis of atmospheres and modes of inhabiting the world, and Emmanuel Monnier, through his critical personalism, emphasize the irreducibility of lived experience and the ethical personal dimension against technical abstraction. All of this implies that a platform reconfiguring the public sphere through indices incurs in a form of depersonalization of political judgment, transforms sentient objects into measurable nodes. Felix Kaufmann contributes logical and methodological tools. His reflections on the conditions of validity of legal knowledge and the need for a logical critique of social language underline that any system of categorization requires conceptual self-control. Translated to the terrain of media classification, the argument is that categories such as bias, factuality demand robust conceptual foundations to avoid becoming mere computational conventions. Without that grounding, metrics become political operationalizations disguised as scientific instruments. Finally, Guy Debord, in The Society of the Spectacle, describes how modern social life transforms into representation. Social relations appear mediated by images that replace direct experience. In the regime of the spectacle, the separation between representation and reality becomes institutional. What is real is organized as the consumption of images. Ground News fits seamlessly into this critique as a device that turns political disagreement into a spectacle of comparisons. Seeing which outlets say what becomes an aesthetic performative exercise rather than an argumentative deliberation. The user becomes a spectator of divergences, not an actor in disputes. Practical result is evident. What is being built is not merely a measure of the media ecosystem, but a public grammar that reorganizes how citizens understand, evaluate, and act politically. The assumption that more information equals better judgment is an epistemological shortcut. Technologically, it's metrics, visualizations, and labels. It is not a neutral mirror. It is a normative mediation that delimits what can be thought. Critical ethos that democracy demands argumentative discourse. Recognition of reasons, ethical negotiation cannot be recovered through dashboards. It requires deliberative institutions, critical education, and civic practices, and no score index can replace. Thus, claiming that Ground News empowers users by showing all perspectives confesses the expansion of informational repertoire with the guarantee of judgment. Displaying data is necessary but insufficient condition. Without epistemological politics that problematize the categories themselves, us versus them, metrics become rituals of certification. In Fuselian terms, what changes is not only the regime of truth, what is said, but also the regime of enunciation. Who may speak, how legitimacy is granted. Ooh, I never actually thought about that. How legitimacy is granted to your words. That's powerful. Brain going brrrr. Overheating, shutting down. Rebooting. Windows noise. Yes, exactly, Raymond. Exactly. And algorithms are inscribed as contemporary techniques of enunciation that organize the legitimacy of discourse itself. Ground News, then, is not merely a well-intentioned app, it is a symptom of our age. I have a brief belief that knowledge can become omnipotent, that technical transparency can substitute for personal judgment, that automatic neutrality is possible. It is a device that reframes journalism, politics, and history as problems of statistical calibration rather than of interpretation, responsibility, or ethical tension. And in doing so, it conceals that what has always been the core of potential thought: uncertainty, contradiction, error, and passion. History of political thought demonstrates incontestably that the binary classification of left and right has always been not only a simplification, but often a useful lie, a power device that conceals contradictions, improbable alliances, and unexpected betrayals. Groups that seemed antagonistic ally when it suits them. Enemies end up supporting the same cause without recognizing one another. Ideologies recycle old adversaries as current allies. This tangle shows that ideological reductio is not only historically false, but nociologically useless. It does not help us understand reality, only what fits into our mental boxes. Let us look at concrete examples. In the 1930s, the concept of Popular Front was a central policy of the Communist International. Socialists and communists joined forces with liberals and progressives to contain the fascist threat. Communists, who not long before had denounced socialists as social fascists, changed their strategy to unite against the common enemy. This temporary alliance showed that ideological antagonism can yield
This one day I
political
walked
urgency.
in on my parents having sex, and in a Mortal Kombat voice I said, "Round 3, finish her."
Oh my god, Mike. Jesus Christ. Round 3. Fight! Finish her. So bad. So bad, Mike Who Cheese Harry. I love it. Mike Who Cheese Harry might be our new replacement for Smokey. He's not the same, but he has the vibes. On another plane, consider the existence of syndicalism, fuck if I know. Syndicalist fascism, syndicalist fascism in Italy. A fascist current that adopted ideas of class struggle and working class nationalism. Fucking ads. I gotta take a piss. I'll be right back. Grab some water too. Do 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 do. Oh, we back. We back. All right. On another plane, consider the existence of syndicalist fascism in Italy. Fascist currents that adopted the ideas of classic struggle and working class nationalism, which at certain moments seemed to share some tensions with radical socialism. It was not a soft ally of the left, it was a hybrid. Rhetorically, it claimed labor rights and union action, while situating itself within authoritarian nationalist discourse. This hybridity complicates any schema that places fascism and socialism in insurmountably opposite poles. For more precise geopolitical examples, during the post-war period in Cambodia, China indeed supported Pol Pot's Khmer Rouge regime, while the United States maneuvered to weaken Vietnamese and Soviet influence in the region, thus contributing indirectly, though not without financial channels, to Pol Pot's strengthening and a geopolitical counterweight. It was a third front of interests, enemies of enemies coinciding without ideological alignment. This dynamic shows that geopolitical alliances often operate by calculation, not by ideological coherence. A well-documented living example is the Maoist conflict in Nepal in 2005. Reports confirmed that China sent at least 18 trucks loaded with weapons and ammunition to Nepal through the Tibetan border to help the Nepalese army fight the Maoist insurgency. Although Nepal was depending on India and other suppliers, this Chinese aid to kill Maoist insurgencies demonstrates that China, officially declaring itself Maoist or communist, has in practice acted against specific Maoist movements when its state interests dictated so. Alberto Fujimori's regime in Peru during the 1990s is another striking case. It exhibited clearly authoritarian features: dissolution of Congress, 1992 self-coup, human rights violations, and war against Sendero Luminoso. Yet simultaneously maintained strong neoliberal policies. Privatizations, economic liberalization, market incentives. This combination of political authoritarianism with economic liberalism places outside the neat categories of left or right. If we hold a strict theoretical definitions. And let's not forget Fujimori purchased Chinese weapons while fighting Sendero Luminoso, another Maoist group, which notably China did not arm, perhaps because they were too poor, or perhaps they were massacring entire indigenous populations deemed anti-revolutionary. The relationship was pragmatic, buying weapons, importing military technology, but not as if China were ideologically supporting Fujimori's regime against Sendero within some Maoist agenda, unless, of course, one believes China plays 10 or 11-dimensional chess, like M-theory or string theory. In Latin America, the history of U.S. internationalism provides multiple examples in which a country that proclaims itself the defender of liberal democracy supports dictatorships, the overthrow of democratically elected governments, state repression, and anti-popular programs, all in the name of security, anti-communism, and the geopolitics of the Western Bloc. Operation PB Success in Guatemala in 1954. The overthrow of Jacob Arbenez, directly supported by the CIA, aimed to protect economic interests, formerly the United Fruit Company, and prevent agrarian reform policies, deemed communist. Similarly, the governments of Rafael Videla or Argentina or Pinochet in Chile, 1973-1990, received diplomatic, military, or covert support from the U.S. during the Cold War, despite their authoritarian nature and representative actions. The support includes military training, intelligence cooperation, and economic assistance. More recently, some on the left interpret Putin as a form of anti-liberalist liberalist resistance, because he opposes the United States or citizens criticizes, Jesus, I can't fucking read, or criticizes Western liberalism. The logic is as rudimentary as it is emotional. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. In this way, figures and movements and slow blinking. I'm just like trying to keep my fucking eyes open. The logic is as rudimentary as it is emotional. You look like you need some coffee. I don't drink coffee. It doesn't agree with me. I wouldn't be able to be here if I was drinking coffee. Enemy of my enemy is my friend. In this way, figures and movements that once defended workers, internationalism ended up justifying. I know, we're halfway there, Raymond. We're halfway there. It's been an hour. No, I can't drink coffee. Figures and movements that once defended workers, internationalism, end up justifying authoritarianism, homophobic, and ultra-nationalist regimes in the name of a supposed emancipatory polarity. Sorry, you said words that I recognize, but the order you place them in make no sense. Basically, it blows up my insides. Take from that what you will. Paradox is grotesque, applauding the Kremlin for fighting NATO, without noticing that it's political. Like, thinking about it. Thinking about it, I'm getting, like, shit cramps. Just thinking about it. I don't even want to know. Let's not go there. Plotting the Kremlin for fighting NATO without noticing that its political structure is built on the same principle as Boris Yeltsin in the 1990s. Constitution is whatever the president says it is, and if you don't like it, I'll send in the tanks. And that is that its economic model was oligarchic. State capitalism, closer to oil magnates than the proletariat. The confusion is not new. Bro drinks coffee and fucking melts like a Nazi dude at the end of the first Indiana Jones movie. Yeah, legit. I'm like the guy who's like, I'm immune to fucking acid in Rick and Morty. Second that coffee touches me, I just... Something about the bean, man. Something about the bean just doesn't go well with me. Can drink teas, but coffee beans? I don't know what it is about them. What's the government putting in fucking coffee that makes that happen to me? I goddamn don't know. Government be some fucked up bullshit, you tell me. Soviet nostalgia, for example, which today circulates in sectors of the former post-Soviet space, is not a revolutionary revival, but a form of conservatism, idealization of the past, reference for lost stability, rejection or plurality, and liberal uncertainty. Progressivism thus becomes reactionary, clinging to the old order and the promise of security and greatness. The myth of the USSR turns into a nationalist myth, and yesterday's socialism becomes imperial romanticism. Conversely, contemporary liberalisms, especially in their chronocratic version, adopt conservative traits: defense of the financial status quo, aversion to social conflict, and messianic faith in indicators. In their claim to neutrality, they end up preserving power structures as rigid as those of the old regimes. Meanwhile, the right assumes insurgent, rebellious, anti-establishment gestures, anti-establishmentarianism, what was once revolutionary discourse, rejection of the system, critique of globalism, defense of authenticity against bureaucracy, reappears inverted in figures such as Trump, Bolsonaro, Le Pen, or Mali. Name drop. 21st century no longer distinguishes between left and right as ideological spaces, but rather as tribal affections. Hence, part of the global left symbolically aligns with Putin in much the same way that in the 1930s sectors of the European socialists celebrated Mussolini for his apparent break with the bourgeoisie over order, or Hitler for his enmity with Anglo-Saxon powers. Recall Nazi propaganda depicting the United States as members of the Ku Klux Klan in their robes, enslaving black people, tormenting Catholics, Jews, and immigrants. This version of the Club de Canto karaoke became known in this era for that very reason, rather than for pursuing carpetbaggers and scalawags, as the original version did. They had indeed become more ambitious with their racism for the time. They indeed became more ambitious with their racism for the time. They even made their own propaganda film, the infamous The Birth of a Nation, D.W. Griffith, in 1915, which likely continued to feed the minds of racists and radical supremacists with nostalgia, seeing its scene of the Klan's cavalry charge coming to aid the besieged innocents, reflected in the charge of the Rohirrim in Lord of the Rings, Two Towers, Peter Jackson, 2002. And again in The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, Peter Jackson, 2003. Though the first is more reminiscent due to the figure of Gandalf the White leading the charge, one could say the same in both cases. Tactical position was confused with moral affinity. Recent political history, therefore, is not a continuous line of progress and setbacks, but a whirlwind of permutations. Leftists turned custodians of order, right-wingers disguised as rebels, revolutions culminating in bureaucracies and dictatorships legitimizing themselves with emancipatory language. Jesus. All this confirms from that binary axis, left-right, conservative, progressive, liberal, equality, no longer explain anything. What remains are configurations of power, narratives of identity, and impulses of fear and hope. Ideologies have been emptied of doctrinal content and filled with symbols, enemies, and memories. In comparative political theory, the problem of binary classifications has been examined from its ontological root. Hannah Arendt warned that politics is not defined by the mere management of interests or the administration of resources, but by the possibility of the public act of appearing before others in a common space where speech and action unfold. The human condition, Arendt emphasizes that the political is neither a moral system nor an economy. It is a mode of existence that arises when humans gather to deliberate and decide their fate. the friend-enemy distinction, although Ardent rejects it in its Schmittian formulation, nevertheless reveals, as she herself acknowledges, the need for a conflicting field. Views politics without conflict degenerates into bureaucracy and depoliticizes management of consensus. Carl Schmitt, from the opposite extreme, argues that the essence of the political lies precisely in this distinction. It is neither a psychological metaphor nor a rhetorical symbol, but a pure form of antagonism that gives meaning to the political existence of peoples. Where the enemy disappears, Schmitt says, politics disappears as well. What remains is economy, private morality, or technique. In this sense, the modern attempt to suppress conflict in the name of liberal consequences amounts to a depoliticization of the world. Enemies become options, wars become humanitarian interventions, and sovereignty dissolves into technical bodies that no longer decide but merely manage. Raymond Arm, hey Raymond! From a liberal perspective, this part which Smith and the fucking background music go so hard, actual metal. Raymond Aaron, from a liberal perspective, concedes that the conflict is inevitable, but considers it manageable. The task of mature democracies is not to eliminate political structure, but to keep it within limits that do not destroy the common body. For Aaron, party systems are not metaphysical principles, but instruments of dynamic equilibrium. Ideologies are, in the strictest sense, languages of legitimization. They change according to historical context, conditions of possibility, and symbolic horizons of each society. Norberto Bobbio took his reflection further. In Right and Left, he tried to rescue a minimal differentiation criterion, the attitude towards equality. But even there, he acknowledged that this line continuously shifts, and that the content of equality or freedom varies across eras. For what an 18th century liberal was progress, for a 20th century social democrat may be regression. What for a communist was emancipation, for an anarchist was state tyranny. Thus, the left-right distinction is not a fixed essence, but a mobile function of opposition, a rhetorical form of historical antagonism. From the perspective of contemporary materialist philosophy, Gustavo Bueno brought this critique to his gnoseological core. It's not enough to say that ideologies change. One must understand why they change. Political categories do not belong in the realm of pure ideas, but to the historical structures of power. In his first essay on the categories of political sciences, Bueno argues that concepts such as state, government, and democracy are not abstract entities existing outside historical context, but analytical instruments that must be understood within the material evolution of political institutions and the interaction among diverse social powers. The left-right axis is a semantic construction produced within the history of modern European states. Outside of that context, in Asia, Africa, or Latin America, it loses its meaning or transforms into something else. Bueno thus criticizes the tendency of many theorists to project European categories onto entirely different historical and cultural realities. What in 19th century France or Spain could be clearly defined as left or right based on relationships to power, poverty, and parliamentary representation may in other contexts become unrecognizable or acquire different meanings. So any attempt at universalization is misleading. To attempt universalization is to fall into what Bueno calls ideological transcendentalism, turning into an ontological principle what was a historical political contingency. This error, he emphasizes, in the myth of the right and the myth of the left is reinforced by contemporary political mythology, which naturalizes ideological categories and presents them as direct reflections of social reality. I really like this kind of idea because it goes to show how, like, we can look at, like, Greek and, like, Greek myths and, like, origin stories of people and say, ha, they're so dumb, they didn't know what they were talking about. But on a political atmosphere, the exact same thing is going to be said in, like, 150 years for the current political scape, right? And we not that different. No. So it's a scary thought to think that, you know, that little tiny shift in perspective is only a couple of generations away, in my opinion. Ignoring that they are, above all, discursive and historical constructions. Thus, the left and right are not essences of the political world, but semantic coordinates that only make sense within certain systems of power and specific social conflicts. In this way, what we call biological or ideological maps, such as those provided by I was about to say Newgrounds. I was about to say Newgrounds. People from the past, dumb, me smart. Exactly, Raymond. Make same mistake as person from the past. 150 years from now, guy says, man, past dumb, me smart. Every fucking time in history. Every single time. Like, basically without exception, other than, oh, they killed themselves off, so there was no me smart, it was just past dumb. Newgrounds has done irredeemable damage to our society. Oh, man. Fucking Newgrounds. That was the good shit. That was the good shit back in the day. Ground news and other classification algorithms are not simple neutral representations, but sociological schemes that artificially fix the topology of power. I was more of an albino black sheep person, bro. I miss Flash. Yup. Never have good things anymore, right? Frederick's Fox videos. Strong bad! Remember when the internet was more than 4 social media sites? Yeah, Hugo. When you're like, man, do I either go on Reddit, do I go on Twitter, do I go on TikTok, or do I just go on Google? Or I guess Instagram. Kind of fucking ridiculous. Well, homie, I'm a bounce. Alright, yeah, sounds good, Hugo. I am struggling to make it through this. Have a night rest of this night. This time. Fuck me. Yes, thank you, Hugo. Have a good night, good sir. Take care. We'll see you in the next one, brother. Words not work, mouth do stuff. Fuck! Not simple neutral representations, but sociological schemes that artificially fix. We 2/3 in the topology of power. If political reality is measured in left-right terms, as if these categories were stable substances. Told you it was a big boy. I was prepared at 7,000 words. I was ready. One loses precisely the essential aspect. The processual? No idea. Dialectual and conflictive nature of political praxis. The alliances, ruptures, semantic inversions, and doctrinal metamorphosis that traverse the history of political movements are not anomalies, but expressions of the same dynamism that constitutes politics itself. Therefore, politics cannot be reduced to a linear spectrum of a moral taxonomy. It is rather a dialect of effective forces, a continuous struggle over the determination of the common. Thinking of it in terms of ideological purity is equivalent to giving up the effort to understand it. Ultimately, left-right, far from being a universally useful axis, functions as a mental map for quick consumption, not as an instrument of historical understanding. Any ideological reduction that does not include examples, like ones above, that is not aware of the possibility of contradictory alliances of enemy allies, of symbolic betrayal, is condemned to produce illusion, not knowledge. If we have already dismantled the illusion of a universal left-right axis, it is now useful to move from the historical plane to the structural one. Politics cannot be understood solely as a succession of events or as a simple struggle between doctrines. It must be conceived as a complex system. From this perspective, systems thinking, as developed by Beer, Luhmann, Alvar Gonzalez, and Johnson Bertoglio, provides tools for understanding politics without reducing it to rigid categories. According to Gustave Bueno, the system is finite, totally composed of statistics totalities, which can be internal or contain other systems, thus generating a supra-systematic and intra-systematic structure. Oscar Johansson Bertoglio, in Introduction to General Systems Theory, offers a typological of organizational levels. Simply dynamic, blah blah fucking worker, shoot that bullshit into Boozits who's does Suger Watts for Semmelfins on Durboldop. You'll never get away with it. Everyone attack the ads! If we all attack at once, we might be able to kill them! Sir, why aren't you attacking? It's futile to attack ads. Oh, fuck. Flinging half my granola bar. Everywhere. What's up, Ninja? See a girl as a femboy can easily pass as a hot woman. Would you think that girl's a lesbian or not? Probably, yeah. I saw this thing today and it was like, comment, you are the hottest femboy I've ever seen. And then her response to it, yeah, I'm actually 100% a natural woman. Always have been. But thanks. When the real thing looks too much like a femboy, we have a fucking problem. Or it's the solution. I'd probably initially think they're a lesbian. Self-cleaning chair. Too bad the carpet's not self-cleaning. Thing's never gonna be the same. My bias came from media where a straight man had a hots for a femboy because he easily passes as a hot woman. Yup. True. You ask too many questions. So, no, he's saying like that's what the femboy would say. You're asking too many questions, and then they try to fucking make out with you. So, you want to hear my take? It would be something along the lines of, I've always wanted children, and I found my soulmate. Too bad they're a femboy. Oh, I saw 2 liters of Pepsi. Nice, Raymond. Hell yeah. You're like, fuck! Why? That's bullshit. Alright, I guess we're adopting. According to Gustavo Bueno, a system is a finite totality composed of systatic totalities, which can be internal or contain other systems, thus generating a super-systemic and intra-system... We already read that? Topological organization level, simple dynamics, social systems... Subsystem interacts with others through synergies, recursion, feedback. Social and organizational systems, Bertoglio, can't say that, Bertoglio recognizes that these parts are not mere isolated gears, but coherent components of a totality whose identity depends on internal relations and external context. David Alvar Gonzalez introduces the notion of the holotic, referring to totalities in which each part can be seen as a whole, and at least two holitic levels emerge. One... Oh my god, something in my fucking eye. One corresponding to the foundational basis of the system, complex sets of components, and other to the parts constituting those bases. In technical and political systems, this coordination between levels requires the action of subjects instituted as systemizers, who set goals, objectives, and operational criteria, orienting the system toward certain functional and normative ends. Stanford Beer and Nicholas Luhmann highlight from distinct but convergent approaches that no system can be understood without recognizing its operational closure. Beer, in his viable system model, demonstrates that every organization, political, economic, or social, must possess a hierarchy of subsystems capable of maintaining its identity in the face of a changing environment. His law of requisite variety implies that internal complexity of a system must be at least as rich as the complexity of the environment it faces. Otherwise, the organization collapses into simplification. Luhmann, in turn, conceives social systems as autopoietic networks of communication that reproduce themselves through their own symbolic operations. Political system, therefore, does not reflect an external reality. It maintains and transforms itself by communicating about itself. In both cases, the observer is inevitably implicated. Whoever describes politics is part of the same communicative process that are attempting to analyze. There is, therefore, no outside perspective on politics, only a multiplicity of internal recursive perspectives that constitute its intelligibility. Words! At this insurrection of epistemology and systems theory, a fundamental limitation becomes evident. Even the most sophisticated algorithms, such as those used by platforms like Ground News, operate within this same constraint, transforming complex phenomena into simplified categories and reducing policies to a manageable but meaning impoverished data stream. Words! Ground News within this framework is not simply a technological application, but a system that inhabits political complexity. By automatically classifying news as left or right, the algorithm suppresses critical feedback and reduces politics to a linear, homogenized flow of information. The effect is twofold. First, it creates the illusion of control and understanding. Second, it blocks the emergence of new interpretations and connections between events that, in a living system, would generate emergent meanings. From a system's perspective, we can distinguish between two notions of politics. Living system, dynamic, adaptive, and unpredictable, composed of hierarchical systems and networks of interaction that self-organize. Its parts, institutions, actors, discourses are interconnected through constant feedback, making crises, paradigm shifts, and emergent phenomena possible and expected. This type of system remains open to novelty and complexity, and its understanding requires positioning oneself within the interaction itself, recognizing the holitic levels of its components and bases. According to Alvar Gonzalez, closed system. Codified, reduced to pre-established categories. What we're writing now, this is Raymond Dow's essay on why you shouldn't use Ground News, because it is, like, normalizing and systemizing and gamifying a system that's not meant to be static and not meant to be two-sided. Like, it's taking, like, an octagon and saying that it's a rectangle. And that's kind of how it's treating politics in a way of stating that it's the best thing because it categorizes them in these ways. But how were those ways categorized in the first place, right? Closed system. Codified, reduced to re-established categories, and capable of incorporating very little novelty without violating its internal classification criteria. Here, politics becomes a predictable and quantified object, susceptible to epistemological manipulation. The systatic totalities composing the system lose functional autonomy, and interaction becomes superficial, transforming politics into a series of labels rather than a real field of action. Ground News exemplifies this transformation. Politics ceases to be a living system and becomes a closed system. It does not merely filter information, it imposes a model of reasoning. The algorithm does not interpret politics, but makes it intelligible only within the limits of its own binary logic. The I can't even fucking, I don't even know, we're just not even trying.
Autopoiesis.
Autopoiesis of social systems, as Luhmann describes, is disrupted by replacing critical interpretation and genuine communication with quantitative categorization. Politics is transformed into a mechanism for maintaining apparent structures, a simulacrum of understanding where real action and decision making are reduced to predictive and formal operations. In other words, Ground News not only limits the perspective of politics, but also reorganizes the system itself, aligning its flows of information and perception within the most superficial levels of interpretation, while ignoring the holistic complexity and deep interactions that constitute authentic political dynamics. The illusion of neutrality and objectivity thus functions as an epistemological cover, distinguishing the reduction of politics to manageable data as an exercise in impartial analysis. This perspective reveals a paradoxical effect. The apparent objectivity of Ground News is the mask of an epistemological reduction. By attempting to measure and classify, the application turns political conflict into a manageable data flow, yet devoid of autonomous meaning. The political system emerges as a spectacle of information, not as a field of action, a laboratory of visibility that offers cognitive security in exchange for analytical depth. Journalism is not an accidental function of modernity, but one of its vital organs, its respiratory apparatus. Every era has shaped its forms of communication according to its own power structures, and the press, from its origins, has operated as a symbolic mediation between knowledge and authority, between voice and representation. The idea of a free press is a late fiction. The history of journalism is, strictly speaking, the history of how power narrates itself. Since the invention of the printing press, journalism emerged not only as a vehicle for disseminating news, but also as a builder of a public sphere. Gazettes, pamphlets, and news sheets of the 16th and 17th centuries allowed political language to escape the confines of palaces and enter cafes, markets, and urban passageways. Nope. Not doing it. Toucan Sam.
Tocqueville.
I heard Tocqueville. Yeah, okay, you want your Tocqueville now? I'm not even trying to pronounce that. Tocqueville. Alright, Tocqueville observed that in the United States, freedom of the press was intertwined with democratic vitality, yet this freedom was always contaminated by economic interests. Tocqueville! Let's go! Censorship criteria and the need for social census. The press emancipated, but it also organized census. By the 18th and 19th centuries, with the expansion of the bourgeoisie, commerce, and literacy, journalism began to institutionalize as a business. Marx analyzed it not as a mere reflection of the world, but as a factory of realities. The newspaper not only informs, but also defines what can be thought, what can be said, what is recognized as news. At this moment, the press ceases to be merely a medium and becomes part of the structure of power and reputation. A machine for narrating governments, heroism, and national calamities. And alongside the pure newspapers, literary journalism emerged, a hybrid space where chronicle, essay, critique, and aesthetic sensitivity intersect. In Spain, Mariano Jose de Lara cultivated the space of the Combrists and critical article with texts such as
Huelva usted mañana en el Castellano Viejo. Gustavo Adolfo Becker.
In addition to being a poet, collaborated with contemporaneo. He is attributed with literary and costumbrist articles.
Cartas desde mi celda.
And his work, Cartas desde mi celda, published in 1864, constitutes one of the clearest examples of his journalistic work. In Latin America and Chile, and Camilo Enriquez of La Aurora de Chile employed the newspaper as a political weapon. Jose Victorio Sondario delivered on May 3rd, 1842, the boop-a-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, not even if it's more than 4 words, I'm not trying. Boop doop.
Discurso de Incorporación a la Sociedad Literaria de Santiago.
A foundational document of 1842 literary movement, which was published and is available in digitization such as those by Memoria Chilena, Eduardo Anguita, embodied in Chile the most intense union between poetry and journalism. In his columns for El Mercurio, 1976-1883, later collected under the title of La Belleza de Pensar, the poet transformed the press into a space for metaphysical meditation. Love, time, identity, and language were treated with a perception of the highest thought and the urgency of news. This fusion of thought and writing left a profound mark, visible in the celebrated program by Christian Warnken, also a columnist for El Mercurio. La Belleza de Pensar, RTV, 1995, and Canal 13 Cable, 2005. And later, Una Belleza Nuen TVN 2006 and LA Red 2013, where conversation inherited the vocation of the journalistic essay as a form of wonder. 20th century intensified the media sovereignty. Media sovereignty of journalism. Marshall I'm losing it. Marshall McLuhan anticipated that the medium becomes the message, that the technical form, radio, cinema, television, mass-printed newspapers, shapes public sensibility. During wars or national conflicts, the media compete not only to report, but to forge perceivable reality, illustrating flying tanks, as Italian and Austro-Hungarian newspapers did during the First World War, spreading moral lessons of victory like Chinese royal advisors to the emperor to save their own heads, and manufacturing visible and invisible enemies. Jean-Paul Sartre in Le Temps Modernes already told us that to write is to commit. The writer-journalist cannot evade the fact that their pages participate in the historical narrative. But media capitalism turns news into commodity. Information becomes flow. Statistics trend. Guy Debord spoke of the spectacle that replaces concrete experience, and of the public turned into a passive spectator. Every ideology, once consolidated, generates its own reflection. Political oppositions are not so much moral antipodes as specular images within the same apparatus of power. Foucault showed that every emancipatory discourse tends to produce mechanisms of surveillance, discipline, and normalization. Gramsci, in turn, contributed the idea of cultural hegemony, where power operates not only by dominating the state, but also by shaping consensus, values, and common sense. In many cases, liberalism, which promises freedom, ends up censoring in the name of tolerance, just as some regimes that define themselves as communist have created their own bureaucratic hierarchies, obeying the demands of command, efficiency, or system preservation. History abounds with these inverted mirrors. Margaret Thatcher and Jiang Zemin, opposed in doctrine, coincided in subordinating the individual of the productive order. Pinochet and Stalin both declared enemies, ideologically, of course, although it is uncertain whether they fully understood their own ideology. Established regimes of total control under the sign of internal enemy, and populisms of various stripes, from Perón to Trump, from Chavez to Orban, share the same paternalistic pathos, the voice that promises to liberate the people is the one that most controls them. So fucking true. They promise you the solution, and then they sell you the lie that makes you believe it to be a solution. And through it, they enslave you. If only we knew better. If only we could fix it. If only there was something that wasn't biased like humans, that was more intelligent, could make better decisions, and would just have an overall higher accuracy rate. But you know, you could never... He said he was the good guy. Yeah. I mean... How am I supposed to know? It's not my fault. I didn't listen to anything he said. He just said he was the good guy. So I said, okay, well, I'm voting for the good guy. My friends and family said he was the good guy. Turns out he wasn't the good guy. Such is life, I guess. We move on. Well, we can't now because we're all fucking dead. But, hey, you know, maybe consciousness goes on after existence. You never know. An eternal dream. Deleuze would describe this phenomenon as a microphysics of desires. The forces driving an ideology are the same that under another name nourish its opposite. The drive for moral purity, the need for an adversary, the desire to purge error. These are structural invariants of every political form. Hence, atheism... Is that supposed to say atheism? Or is it? Wait, I'm so, like, isn't... You just blew my mind. I swear atheism was spelled with an A-E. Goes to show how retarded I am. If that is atheism. My inner retard coming out, guys. My inner... It's okay. It only comes out once every 3 minutes. Okay? That's a pretty good ratio, okay? Once every 3 minutes for like 4 seconds, my retard comes out. I think that's legitimate. That's 1% of the time. That's less than 1% of the time. Wait, no, I'm math bad. That's actually like 2% of the time. It's like 2.6% of the time. I'm math bad. I'm math bad. Atheism can become dogmatic. Okay, guys, unretard moment. Chat, why do you watch this streamer? Chat. 'Cause they're just like me! The drive for moral purity, the need for an adversary, the desire to purge error, these are structural invariants of every political form. Hence, atheism can become dogmatic, religion can become rationalist, collectivism can privatize, and liberalism can moralize. 20th century, with its dance of revolutions and counter-revolutions, showed that power does not dissolve when the flag changes, transfigures, ideologies like opposing mirrors, produce an infinite reflection of purges, conversions, and orthodoxies. What each one fights in the other, ultimately, its own face. Ground news ultimately is not a cause, but a symptom. The bright reflection of an era that no longer thinks but manages information. Its promise of objectivity is the broken mirror of a world where understanding has been replaced by classification. The algorithm does not deceive us, it merely returns the image of our cognitive laziness. We demand clarity and receive filters. We demand truth and are offered an interface. Politics, reduced to a data aesthetic, abandons its tragic and conflictual dimension to become a spectacle of correlations. A show. Ideological difference is measured in percentages, not in projects. Critique dissolves into engagement metrics. Judgment has become calculation in the pejorative sense. And in this new regime, the citizen does not need to understand the world. Technical neutrality, once the ideal of knowledge, is here transformed into its parrot. Oh, for fuck's sakes, I thought I could beat ads. Fuck, can I have my story read tomorrow? Yeah, you can, Ninja. Sure thing. Honey Notes Nutrigains Valley Nature Bar. Food of the future, my friends. This is the food where poor people are gonna eat. Basically condensed oats with honey. Have you ever eaten bugs before? No. Not even as a kid. I just somehow knew they wouldn't taste good. Wait, I've had McDonald's, so I've had mealworms. I hate coconut. I hate coconut. Technical neutrality, once the ideal of knowledge is here, transformed into its parody, and objectivity without a subject. The illusion of impartiality. That transparency promised by the algorithm does not reveal the world. It dissects it. Who thinks when everything seems to work? Not a fan. Never been a fan. I don't know why. Can't explain it. It's the taste. I can tell if there's fucking coconut in something. I'll be like, no, there's fucking coconut in it. Shit's nasty. So, we're probably gonna call it here. Because it was a long day for me. And I'm going to need to do a lot tomorrow. So, thanks for sharing your story, guys. Thanks for hanging out, right? Not telling you to read, but remember how I told you I added images to the essays? Yeah, what is the image that you did? What is this? Just look at the cultural taxidermy one. Wait, you added images to all of them? Thank you for great read to talk. No worries. Yeah, we'll be back again tomorrow, as always, right? Peace, true. Most I'm looking for ones that make sense or are funny. Don't worry, guys. My next story isn't that long. True. Do you want to repost it? I have no idea where it is. Oh, wait. Never mind. Found it. The fuck is that? I love it. I was talking to Raymond, sorry. Yeah, no worries. It's all good. Is what it is. I'm like, is this a picture of you, Raymond? It's the "Am I retarded" meme. I don't know, man. That goes over my head. Too much for me. Too much for me. I don't know. I can't bring it on. I can't bring it up. I can't bring it over. It's kind of too much. But, you know, that's just the way that it is, right? Gotta do what you gotta do. But anyways, remember, guys, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for coming by. You guys are fucking amazing. Always be yourselves. Never forget that you are a creative mind, and your entire existence revolves around it, whether you think that or not. People underestimate what creativity truly is. Your mind and your actions are all the creativity you ever need. So remember, if you can't say fuck you to your friends, who can you say fuck you to? Fuck you! Alright, so what is this?
I'm retarded?
Yup, sounds about right. Sounds about right. Alright, who are we raiding today, guys? Where are we going today? And Callie, if you're here, I'm really sorry we didn't get to play Rivals. I know. I'm a piece of shit. Don't worry, guys. I'm a loser, ass, piece of motherfucking shit. I am just trash, balls, dick, fuck, ass. Bullshit. But hey, we'll see you guys on the other side, alright? Fuck you.
What's up? Oh shit. Citation, what's up? Thank you for the raid, brother. What's up, Raven? Shadow? Citation, how y'all doing?
Truer than true. See you in the next.